This is Journey Through Iran, Episode 11, written by Abdulmaalik Hashmi and read by Liam. 4 royal beds. The guest house in the city of Bam wasn't too expensive, just a little more than I expected. They charged by the bed, so I had to pay 400 tomans. If I had a travel companion, it might have been cheaper, but travelers are usually alone, and being alone often costs more. The man at the guest house handed me the key and said in Persian, "You will be paying for 4 beds." I was surprised. Beds? It felt like I had suddenly become some old-time king, handed the rule of a forgotten kingdom with 4 royal thrones. In Iran, they call a bed a takht, which also means a throne. I was amused by the idea that my simple journey had turned into a kind of royalty. So I decided to enjoy this small piece of kingship. I lay down on each of the 4 beds, one after the other. On one, I stretched my legs. On another, I leaned back with a pillow. It felt like I was visiting different parts of my small kingdom, just as old kings would move from one palace to another. It was Friday, and the city was quiet. No, it was more like the city was awake, but dreaming. The market was still. The shops were locked with big padlocks, and the streets were empty. I looked around for a while, but when I found every door shut, I went back to the guest house and rested again. After the afternoon, I woke up and thought I'd try to find some sign of life in the city. I went out and walked through the streets without a plan, but Bam still seemed sleepy, as if it was stuck in a time long gone. I couldn't find a good place to eat. The markets were still half asleep and all the restaurants were closed. An elder, or big, bottle hunger was growing inside me. My stomach had started to protest loudly. But I couldn't find any proper restaurant in the unfamiliar city where I could satisfy my hunger. Just then, I noticed a small shop. In its glass fridge, bottles of Zamzam cola were shining brightly, like a welcome sight in a dry, empty land. I asked the shopkeeper about the price of the bottle. With a bright face and sparkling eyes, he replied in Persian, "This elder bottle is 4,500 tomans." I was confused. "Elder?" I repeated quietly, unsure. How did this bottle become elder? Did it gain wisdom with age? Or join a spiritual group? The shopkeeper laughed, a loud, cheerful laugh that seemed to echo through the streets of Tehran. "No, sir," he said. "Elder means it's a large size." I looked closely at the bottle. It was indeed larger than usual, but that didn't make it wise or noble. It was just a bigger bottle. "So what do you call a small bottle? A baby bottle?" I asked, trying to understand. The shopkeeper laughed even harder and held his stomach. "No, sir. The small one is called kuchak, a small bottle." I nodded slowly and said in a thoughtful voice, "So in Iran, whether it's a person or a bottle, you become elder not by age or wisdom, but by size. If I overeat and become fat, will you also call me elder?" The shopkeeper winked and replied, "If you bring a bottle of Zamzam cola with you, why not?" We both laughed. I took one of the elder bottles from the fridge and thought to myself, my hunger still remained, but at least I had learned a new word today. Bozorg means large, and that in itself was a big lesson. But this was just the beginning. In Iran, even the word for bed had lost its usual meaning. Where I come from, a takht is a royal throne, a symbol of kingship and glory. But here it simply meant a bed. People here say, "I'm going to my takht" when they go to sleep. The royal throne had now become a place for rest. That's how it is sometimes. When you gain thrones, you lose the dining table. I thought to myself, kingship has its own problems. Even if you have 4 beds to lie on, when there's nothing to eat, a king must rest like any ordinary traveler, quietly and on an empty stomach. Homemade bread. After buying the soda, I walked to a nearby intersection. There, by the roadside, a few women were sitting. They were large-built, wearing traditional Afghan-style, colorful shawls with red, blue, and green flowers. They sat squatting on the ground, as if waiting for something, and in front of them lay large pieces of flatbread wrapped in cloth. The bread smelled warm and fresh. As I got closer, several of them began calling out in a chorus, like old market vendors. "Buy Nan-e-Khanegi! Homemade bread! You must try homemade bread!" It reminded me of the calls one might hear in an old, dusty inn. I hesitantly asked one of the women, "Ma'am, what's special about Nan-e-Khanegi? Where I come from, flatbread is just flatbread." The woman, who wore a stitched headband across her forehead, raised one of the breads with her strong arm and said, "Sir, Nan-e-Khanegi means homemade bread, from our own oven, made with our own hands and hearts. It's not the rough, tasteless bread from the market." I asked with a smile, "So, is this really the scent of your home I'm smelling in the bread?" She laughed, and her round cheeks wrinkled with joy. "Yes, sir. My mother taught me, her mother taught her. This bread is not just flour and water. It has love in it, too." Another woman sitting beside her adjusted her shawl and added, "And the smell you notice, that's the wood fire we use in the oven. Not gas, not electricity, a fire as old as our memories." I said, smiling, "So I'm not just buying bread, I'm buying the scent of a culture." The women laughed together. An older woman, missing most of her teeth, added, "You speak well, sir. Yes, this is Nan-e-Khanegi, homemade bread, flavored with the dust of old times and the warmth of old love." I picked up a piece. It bent softly in my hand like a tired traveler at the end of a long journey. "How much for this piece of heritage?" I asked playfully. The old woman counted on her fingers and said, "Only 100 tomans. Love is cheap now, son. Hate has become expensive." I laughed and handed her a few coins. As I held the bread, it felt like I had picked up something rare, something that had passed through the streets of Tehran, the towns of Kandahar, and the inns of Bukhara. The warmth of the bread sank into my palm. It felt like a grandmother holding her grandson close on a cold night. Back at the guest house, I tore off a bite of the bread and drank a sip of Zamzam cola. When I placed the bite in my mouth, it didn't just melt on my tongue. It melted into my memory. It wasn't just flour. It had the touch of grandmother's hands, their scent, and maybe the soil of Khorasan in it. That night, and the next ones too, the pattern stayed the same: Nan-e-Khanegi and Zamzam cola. I wandered around here and there, but didn't find any restaurant that invited me in, so I kept going with just the bread and cola. Eventually, I wrapped the bread carefully and placed it in my suitcase. And strangely enough, the bread didn't go stale. It didn't dry out, didn't harden, didn't spoil. It stayed soft and fresh, as if it were made for long journeys, just like the kind travelers once took across deserts and mountains. Perhaps it was part of an unspoken agreement between bread and hunger made centuries ago. Even in Bam, I used it for breakfast. I buy a small pack of butter and spread it on the soft center of the bread like light resting on the old walls of a fort. And so, in a small unknown town in Iran, I became attached to a simple meal, Nan-e-Khanegi. It wasn't exactly mine, and it wasn't truly homeless either. It was like a passing memory that lingers on the tongue and slowly fades into another world. The old domed bazaar of Bam. With the Nan-e-Khanegi in my hand, I stepped into the narrow lanes of Bam's old bazaar. It felt like I had entered another time. This wasn't just a place made of bricks, domes, and arches. It looked like something carefully built from an old memory by skilled Iranian architects. I looked up. The arched ceilings had small skylights that let the sunlight in. The way the light spread out made it feel calm and peaceful, like a quiet prayer written in stone. Time here seemed to stand still, like an ancient verse carved into a wall. The first shops I passed were carpet sellers. The carpets were rich in color, deep reds and blues, and full of detailed designs. It seemed as if each one told a story from a long-lost kingdom. A little farther ahead, the shine of copper pots and trays caught my eye. Craftsmen were carving Quranic verses into the metal with small hammers. Outside every workshop stood towers of large cooking pots, stacked from biggest to smallest, showing a kind of balance passed down through generations. The sound of hammering echoed all around, giving the market a rhythm, like an old song being quietly played. But this bazaar was not about just one craft. There were goldsmiths, too. Their jewelry had designs that looked like they belonged to ancient courts. There were shops selling dry fruits and saffron. The smell of figs and spice made the air feel warmer, like the walls had soaked up years of tradition. The people here spoke in clear voices, but with gentle smiles. Their Persian had a softness that made every sentence feel welcoming. After hearing the language all day, I had started dreaming in it too. Maybe this was the best way to learn a language, by living inside it. There were bicycles and motorcycles as well, but they were older models, nothing modern. It felt like walking through a scene from an old movie. At a turn in the path, I stopped and looked back. There was the same turquoise gate I had seen earlier, marked with traditional Persian tilework. Under the afternoon light, the colors looked even brighter, as if old memories were becoming sharper. This bazaar wasn't just a place to shop, it was a piece of history. It had never fully woken up from the past. As I left, I took one last look. But this bazaar was not about just one craft. There were goldsmiths, too. Their jewelry had designs that looked like they belonged to ancient courts. There were shops selling dry fruits and saffron. The smell of figs and spice made the air feel warmer, like the walls had soaked up years of tradition. The people here spoke in clear voices, but with gentle smiles. Their Persian had a softness that made every sentence feel welcoming. After hearing the language all day, I had started dreaming in it too. Maybe this was the best way to learn a language, by living inside it. There were bicycles and motorcycles as well, but they were older models, nothing modern. It felt like walking through a scene from an old movie. At a turn in the path, I stopped and looked back. There was the same turquoise gate I had seen earlier, marked with traditional Persian tilework. Under the afternoon light, the colors looked even brighter, as if old memories were becoming sharper. This bazaar wasn't just a place to shop. It was a piece of history. It had never fully woken up from the past. As I left, I took one last look. And though I walked away, I felt like a small part of me stayed behind, in those archways, among the shops, in the silence of that old market.
Abdulmaalik Hashmi, bringing every journey to life. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more amazing content. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Your support helps us create even better videos. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.